You know, I went to Ranger School in 1991. God, that's hard to say, man. That's hard to say. My oldest son is not too far from going himself. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it was. It was a long time ago. But you know what's cool is I still run into guys that I went to Ranger School with. Now, obviously, we're all retired now, I think, and everyone I've run into is retired. But we still know each other. We still talk to each other as if it were yesterday. Really, I'm not kidding. And when I run into buddies of mine from Special Forces, from 3rd Group, from 7th Group, 10th Group, it's as if time stood still. Like we never left each other's sight. We go right back to where we were. And I know that those guys would move heaven and earth for me, and I would for them. If they needed me, I would be there in a heartbeat for them, and they would be for me as well. We're teammates, you know? Even in transition today, as we work with the Hero's Journey, our nonprofit to help warriors find their voice and tell their story. And as we do our play, lastoutplay.com, where we go to different cities and show the impact of war on American society, you know, I am amazed at the number of guys and girls that come out of the woodwork who I served with, and we're still as close as teammates as we were back then. And a lot of the business leaders who I work with in, you know, the corporate world and in the small business world, and even to some degree in the nonprofit world, you know, they're always asking me, Scott, what do we need to do to build a team that way that you guys had? I mean, even if it's a fraction of what you all had in the special ops community, how do we build that? Can we build that? Can we even build that? You know, especially when you think about today, I know for a lot of business leaders, some of the challenges you face are that, like, one, the stakes are so high. It's a zero defect mentality, you know, high risk, no fail. A lot of your people come from different businesses. They come from different, sometimes your teams are thrown together in a very hodgepodge kind of way, different cultures, and trying to assemble that into a cohesive culture that shows up for each other, that fights for each other, that stands shoulder to shoulder, that swaggers into, you know, a conference, right? Some other town, like a SEAL platoon walks into a bar. You know, building that kind of cohesiveness, I believe it is essential in this day and age. If we're going to, as organizations, be relevant and we're going to stand the tests of stress and fiscal responsibilities and change and distraction and low trust that are thrown at us, our teams have to be so resilient. They have to do the right thing when we're not looking. They have to tell our story better than we do. They have to show up and fight for each other. And man, that's hard these days because there's so much individualism out there, and it's hard to even find the inspiration. I get it. But I do believe that you can build these kinds of teams. I really do. In fact, in areas where I'm working, we are building these kinds of teams. Now, any good special ops sergeant or an infantry sergeant will tell you, you know, one of the first things you want to do to build a great team is shared struggle, right? The reason that my Ranger buddies and we all stay in touch with each other and we still know each other is because we endured and shared a struggle that was enormous, right? And that shared struggle brought us together. You've probably experienced this if you played sports, or even if you served in another branch of the military, or if you went through something with a family member, right? Or you and your wife or your husband endured a really rough time, maybe in the hospital, maybe with one of your children. You shared a struggle, and it's a bond that is formed that you can't even explain to people, right? So we know that we can replicate shared struggle. We can, and we do it all the time in the military, from basic training all the way through the hard elite schools. And certainly combat does that as well. And that's the reason that you see veterans with these strong bonds and military spouses with these strong bonds. But what about the business world? We can't, like, Wes, I don't think we can put them out in like a mud pit, right? No. So we can't do that. I actually tried that at a couple places. It was frowned upon. But what we can do is shared experience. Yeah, the next best thing to shared struggle is shared experience, right? As humans, remember, we're the most social creatures on the planet. So we're always keeping tabs at a semi-conscious level of who we can group with, who we can work with, who we can stand shoulder to shoulder with. And obviously, the people that we have shared experiences with are the ones that we're going to form deeper bonds with. And that serves you as a leader when you're building your team. Now, if you try to do this at your corporate environment, it's going to be very hard. I discourage leaders from doing this, right? You got to be really, it just doesn't work. The phones are ringing, people are pulled away, the environment's not that different. It still feels corporate, and it's going to be very hard to build your team in that environment. I say get off grid. Here's my recommendations, right? If you want to build a strong team, or you want to start building a strong team, this isn't about like going off to, a cabin somewhere and doing trust falls, right? What I'm talking about is getting off grid, somewhere where you can just let your toes uncurl. It could even be like a day trip away from the office, but get off grid. That's number one. Number two, stack those phones. All devices are stacked up and put up. You can have certain times that you check them, but like on breaks and stuff, I don't even want people checking phones because it takes away from the group dynamic. Stack the phones for the day, make contingency plans of one person who can be called if something goes on, but trust me, you can do it. It's gonna build the group dynamic and hurt it if you don't. And number three, get yourself a fire pit, right? If you wanna do some powerful group dynamics, get a fire pit, put people around that fire pit, and then the sun goes down, do some story work around that fire pit. We've been doing it for thousands of years. It's what's built clans, tribes, qualms, and teams, right? It's what we do naturally, and a good facilitator can do this. Try this one when you get around that fire pit. Have a question that is, what was the best team you were ever on and why? And watch what happens as you go around that fire pit. Everyone will have a better sense of themselves. I saw this recently at a commercial bank. When they were done, they had stories about guys that had climbed Mount Everest, women that had been through hurricanes and how they helped each other. Everybody had a better sense of each other, a better sense of themselves and what they valued and what a great team looked like. Not hard to do. Don't even have to spend a lot on it. Just get out there and do it, right? Shared experiences make great teams. Thanks for what you do. Join us on rooftopleadership.com, and I'll see you on the rooftop.